All right, good evening. Welcome to the City Council meeting, May 6th. It's great to see everybody out this evening, and we'll call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum, so we'll declare it open. And Councilwoman Howitt, if you'll lead us in the pledge and invocation this evening.
Please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you'll join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this glorious day of beautiful sunshine and the rain that you have provided us recently. Please be with all of us today as we go about the business of our city. Please guide us and help us do our very best for our citizens. Also, please look after our first responders and keep them safe. In your heavenly name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Okay, Council, did everybody have an opportunity to look at the minutes from the April 15th meeting?
To approve the minutes of April the 15th.
Second.
Okay, motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, at this time, we'll open public hearing. Linda, if you'll read B1 for us, please.
Ordinance 6206, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman extending the corporate limits of said city so as to annex a 56.07-acre tract of land along Fallon Drive, east of Texoma Parkway, State Highway 91, adjacent to the Sherman city limits and in the City of Sherman's extraterritorial jurisdiction, providing for a municipal service plan, providing for severability, providing for repealer, finding that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed was noticed and is open to the public as required by law.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Clint?
This annexation has been requested by Midway Warehouse. There's currently 20 acres that's under contract for design of two different warehouse developments. The annexation does include land along Fallon Drive and Dripping Springs Road, and will open up future land for development in this area.
Okay. Thank you, Clint. Is there anyone here to address item B1 this evening?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, so you're here representing the owner?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay. All right. If not, we'll move on. Linda, if you'll read B2 for us, please.
Ordinance 6207, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman amending Chapter 13 of the Code of Ordinances entitled Utilities at Article 13.02 entitled Water Conservation and Drought Contingency Plan, providing for inclusion in the Code of Ordinances, providing for severability, providing for a repealer, finding that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed was noticed and is open to the public as required by law.
Thank you, Linda. Mark?
Yes, sir. In 1999, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality required that every city develop a water conservation and drought contingency plan. Every 5 years, you have to update your plan or look at it and make sure it's still current and still applicable. This is our fourth revision on the 5-year schedule. Basically, there's very few changes to the plan. It's just updating some numbers from the last 5 years to current time. Like I say, it does address how the city implements some water conservation measures, how we would respond in the event of a drought contingency or a drought occurrence, and also how we would respond to an emergency in our water system, such as a pollution in Lake Texoma or a major catastrophic failure of one of our systems. So basically, this is just kind of a bookkeeping deal. We have to update it every 5 years to comply with the TCEQ regulations. And this is just our 5-year update.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Is there anyone here to address this item this evening? All right, Linda, if you'll read B3 for us, please.
Ordinance 6208, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman amending Chapter 4 of the Code of Ordinances entitled Business Regulations to delete Article 4.13 entitled Police Rotation List Tow Services in its entirety and to provide for a new Article 4.13 to be entitled Towing Regulations, providing for inclusion in the Code of Ordinances, providing for severability, providing for a repealer, finding that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed was noticed and is open to the public as required by law.
Thank you, Linda. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. We're bringing this to, as she mentioned, repeal and replace current record ordinance for the city. So the current ordinance is outdated and to the point that It required many provisions that we would have to bring back to the council when we had to address issues concerning record services. And as time has evolved and the industry has evolved, one of the things that we noticed was that things were not getting brought back because it would be cumbersome at that frequency to bring different issues back. One of the issues has been the rates that record companies could charge, among other things. Accountability being one of those others. As we see them as a representation of the city when we have to have them come out on an emergency scene. So we worked extensively with the record companies because we're not the experts in the industry. And so several are here tonight to basically create an ordinance that would allow the police department to enter into an agreement with each record company. An agreement that we could modify a little bit more freely, and that would allow for more accountability on their end, and then in turn allow them to charge a higher rate as well, a rate that's more in line with comparison cities. By no means are we looking to overcharge when somebody's been involved in an accident and things of that nature. We understand that those are already things that can be trying for people, but it also, the ordinance never allowed for inflation. And so we believe that it better brings us in line with comparison cities and a better practice overall for how we work with record companies.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
All right, is there anyone here to address this item this evening? Okay. If not, we'll move on to B4. Linda, if you'll read that for us, please.
Ordinance 6209, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman amending Chapter 9 of the Code of Ordinances entitled Personnel, Article 9.05, entitled Civil Service for Firefighters and Police Officers, as Section 9.05.026 entitled Authorized Number of Positions, to revise the number of authorized positions in the Police Department, providing for inclusion in the Code of Ordinances, providing for severability, providing for a repealer, finding that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed was noticed and is open to the public as required by law.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Chief?
So we had added an assistant chief position last year for some restructuring. That position has served its purpose, and so we are looking to reallocate that to a patrolman position that will give our patrol a little bit more manpower when we get that position hired, and it'll also be a reduction in overhead cost. So.
Okay. All right, is there anyone here to address this item this evening? Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, Linda, if you'll read B5 for us, please.
Ordinance 6210, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman amending Section 8, subsection 5A, ordinance number 2280, so as to grant a specific use permit to allow a duplex in an R1 one-family residential district at 212 North Cleveland Avenue, being the south 22 feet of lots 6 and 7 and the north 20 feet of lot 8, block 32, College Park Addition. Danny Fuller, owner, Joshua Fuller, applicant, and Jeremy W. Bullard, Design Studio, LLC, architect. Providing for a repealer clause, providing that this specific use permit shall be granted subject to certain conditions, providing a penalty not to exceed $2,000, finding that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed was noticed and is open to the public as required by law.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Scott?
This is a specific use permit for a duplex in a residential district. It went to P&Z in April. They voted to approve it 5-0. Subject to the staff review letter, we received no objections.
Thank you, Scott. Is there anyone here to address this item this evening? Yes.
Danny Fuller on down.
Okay. Thank you, Danny. Anyone else? Okay. Linda, if you'll read B6 for us, please.
Ordinance 6211, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman amending Section 8, subsection 5A, ordinance number 2280, so as to grant a specific use permit to allow 3 duplexes in an R1 one-family residential district in the 1200 block of South Austin Street and the 400 block of West Doolan Street, being all of lots 5 and 6, block 16, B.H. Moore Heirs Addition, containing 0.764 acres in the Samuel Blagg Survey, abstract number 56. Romario and Leticia Alvarez owners, Rick Green general contractor, and Preston Trail Land Surveying surveyor. Providing for a repealer clause, providing that this specific use permit shall be granted subject to certain conditions, providing a penalty not to exceed $2,000, finding that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed was noticed and is open to the public as required by law.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Scott?
Now, this request is to allow 3 duplexes in a residential district. This is a large lot there on the corner. We had no objections, and P&Z voted 5-0 to approve this, subject to the staff review letter.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Is there anyone here to address this item this evening? Okay. Linda, if you read B7 for us, please.
Ordinance 6212, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman amending Section 8, subsection 5A, ordinance number 2280, so as to grant a specific use permit to allow duplex in an R1 one-family residential district at 722 North Ross Avenue, being Lot 1, Block 4, C.J. Killiers, First Edition, Tim Pike owner, and Helvey Wagner Surveying Surveyor, providing for repealer clause, providing that this specific use permit shall be granted subject to certain conditions, providing a penalty not to exceed $2,000, finding that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed was noticed and is open to the public as required by law.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Scott?
Yeah, this request is to allow a duplex on North Ross. It's to have 3 bedrooms on each side. There were no objections. P&Z voted 5-0 to approve this, subject to the staff review letter.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Is there anyone here to address this item this evening? Yes, sir. Okay, thank you, Tim. Anyone else? Okay. Linda, if you read B8 for us, please.
Ordinance 6213, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman amending Section 8, subsection 5A, ordinance number 2280, so as to grant a specific use permit to allow duplex in an R1 one-family residential district at 719 East McGee Street, being part of Lot 1, Block 2, Jones and Summit Addition. Siraj Ali, owner, Underwood Drafting and Surveying Surveyor, and D2L Designs LLC designer, providing for a repealer clause, providing that this specific use permit shall be granted subject to certain conditions, providing a penalty not to exceed $2,000, finding that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed was noticed and is open to the public as required by law.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Scott?
This request is to allow a duplex in a residential district. It's planning on being 4 bedrooms on each side. We did have some objections from the neighborhood. P&Z voted 3-2 to approve this, subject to the staff review letter.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Is there anyone here to address this item this evening? Yes, sir.
Yes, sorry.
Okay. Are you the owner's representative?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Did you raise your hand, sir? Are you Gary?
You want to say?
Okay. No, I'm talking to Mr. Simpson. If you'd come up and state your name and address for the record.
Can I keep my hat on?
Well, it's not a tech hat, but yes.
I wasn't here for the last, when y'all voted on it 3-2. I was out of town. But I own property at 802 East McGee, and so I went by there, saw it in the paper, so I went by. And there's a sign that says, if you have any dealings with this rezoning, contact this number, 903-892-7229. I called it, told them what I wanted. They said they didn't know nothing about it. And I said, well, it should be because it's in the paper. And my problem is where the sign is, this person is so interested in building a duplex, which faces Maxie, which is going to put 4 driveways into the lady's house on the corner. And the other problem I had with it, I asked Scott, had anybody been out there to look at that property? The grass is almost grown up over the sign.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody's really interested in it, are they interested in the neighborhood, or they just want to come in there and throw something up? And the other problem I've got, it said in the paper, there's several duplexes. Well, I don't know where they are, but there's one at 816 East McGee. It's been empty for 3 to 4 months. And the reason it's empty, because I've been in the rental business for 30 years, is they're on a duplex like those, they're in and out, in and out. And evidently this one has had people in, out, in and out, in and out. And I don't know who the owner is, don't have no idea, but I do know it's been sitting there 3 to 4 months empty. It's got a ring bell on the left side, and that's 816 East McGee. And don't think that's a good idea to face it on Maxie anyway. The duplex, I don't mind the house there. They're building a house in the 600 block on a corner, which that's fine, because somebody will probably buy that. You're talking about property where people's gonna move in and live, and the problems I've had with duplexes, and I don't have duplexes, but they're in and out, in and out. So that's basically all I've got to say. I just object to it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Simpson.
Okay.
Simpson, tell me again where your property is, where you,
802 East McGee.
802, okay, thank you.
It's catty corner to that.
Okay.
But here's another problem. I've been written up 5 times by the code enforcer. And there's that grass up over the sign. You can see the sign, but you got to look hard to see the phone number. And I got written up on 802 by the code enforcer. I know who he is. Me and him are good friends. And they wrote me up for stems, 12 inches, and there's 10 of them in the springtime, which I thought was ridiculous. Then another house I had a car parked in the drive. They took a picture of it and said, this car is sitting on grass. And I knew it wasn't sitting on grass. So I took a picture of it, took it up to the code enforcer. He's getting out of his truck when I was getting up there. I showed it to him, and he says, I don't know how in the world they give you that. I said, I can, because she didn't get out, if it is, didn't get out of the car and look. But it's on gravel, and the grass is growing through the gravel. And he said, just go spray it with Roundup.
Okay.
So,
All right, thank you,
That's all
Mr.
I've got.
Simpson. All right, is there anyone else to speak on this one? Okay. Linda, if you'll read B9 for us, please.
Ordinance 6214, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman amending Section 8, subsection 5A, ordinance number 2280, so as to grant a specific use permit to allow microblading permanent makeup in a C1 Retail Business District, 01, 75, and 82 Overlay District at 614 East Lambeth Road, being Lot 1, Block 4, Dr. J.H. Caraway's subdivision. J. Toland's Continental Stylists owners, Barbie Wright, representative, and Olga Kladova, applicant. Providing for a repealer clause, providing that this specific use permit shall be granted subject to certain conditions, providing a penalty not to exceed $2,000, finding that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed was noticed and is open to the public as required by law.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Scott?
This specific use is for permanent makeup, which the state considers a tattoo and requires a license from the applicant on that. It's at J. Toland's beauty place there on Lambert. P&Z voted 5-0 to approve this, subject to the staff review letter.
Thank you, Scott. Is there anyone here to address this item this evening? Yes, ma'am.
I'm here for J. Toland.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay. Linda, if you'll read B10 for us, please.
Ordinance 6215, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman amending Section 8, subsection 5A, ordinance number 2280, so as to grant a specific use permit to allow a vape shop in a C2 General Commercial District and M1 Light Manufacturing District at 2002 Loy Lake Road, being Lot C, Taylor Plaza, Altonia Incorporated owner, Smoke on the Water proposed tenant, Shannon Reed applicant, Mangrum Commercial Real Estate representative, and Underwood Drafting and Surveying surveyor. Providing for a repealer clause, providing that this specific use permit shall be granted subject to certain conditions, providing a penalty not to exceed $2,000, finding that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed was noticed and is open to the public as required by law.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Scott?
Now, this request is for a vape shop there in the Taylor Plaza. Requires a specific use permit. They plan to sell the vape and tobacco accessories, pipes, water pipes, steam rollers, e-cigarettes, vape juices, and accessories. They do not sell cigarettes. P&Z did approve this 5-0, subject to the staff review letter.
Thank you, Scott. Is there anyone here to address this item this evening? Yes, sir. Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else? Okay, with this time, we'll close the public hearing and consider the adoption of ordinances. Council, your questions, discussion this evening?
Start? You want me
Go
to?
ahead.
All right. I have questions for our police chief on ordinance 6208. And so will this still be a rotation for those?
Yes, it will
Okay.
be, yes.
It will be, but we'll just have individual agreements with the companies?
That's right. We'll enter into those agreements and create the rotation from those that we've entered into agreements with.
Okay, and you talked to all the people here around to get the questions that we needed for those agreements, is that what I
That's right. So
understood?
we drew up the agreement. We took some other municipalities and the way that they ran the rotation, drafted. We started this probably in October of last year.
Okay.
Drafted up an agreement and the ordinance, got it to the record companies that were currently on our rotation, had a meeting with them, reviewed it with them in person, made some alterations to that, and then sent it back to them for another round of review. Got it back, and now we're able to present it here to council. So yes, we've gone through a pretty exhaustive process to make sure that we try to get it right.
And I agree with you, it's well out of date, so, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
I think it's great that you've done this to get it back up to par, but then the other question I have is 6209. You said that you're taking one of the assistants down, and it served its purpose. What purpose was that?
Well, for us so by civil service, we have to allocate certain positions for whatever it may be, right? So whether that's for an assistant chief or a corporal or patrolman, we have to have each position tied in there. So in order to structure our department to make sure that we had taken care of some legal responsibilities, we assigned one to assistant chief. So that assistant chief got employment somewhere else. So we're able to take that position, put it somewhere back to a patrolman position.
Okay, and I see that we are hiring additional
Yes,
officers.
yes.
So how many are we looking at hiring?
So we are currently trying to get 5 officers. We've got 4 what we consider overhire positions that we don't necessarily budget for, but we have to have the council's approval to have a certain number of officers. So we've got approval for 75. However, we typically budget for around 71 because we know that through attrition, we're going to continue to typically maintain a little bit lower number of officers than what we have allocated for. So the goal is to try to be in those